We begin the hour with coverage out of France and Prime Minister Mark Carney's first international trip. It's a quick visit, but jam-packed to strengthen Canada's ties with two of its closest allies, France and the United Kingdom. It's heavily symbolic as well, given Canada is embroiled presently in a trade war with the United States, which has historically been the destination of the Prime Minister's first foreign visit. This morning, Mark Carney met President Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace in Paris and delivered remarks alongside the French president.
With you, Mr. President, I want to ensure that France and the whole of Europe works enthusiastically with Canada, the most European of non-European countries, determined like you to maintain the most positive possible relations with the United States. Canada is a reliable, trustworthy, and strong partner of France, which shares our values and lives them through action during this age of economic and geopolitical crises.
The two leaders then moved behind closed doors for a working lunch. Carney heads from Paris to London to meet later today with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. It's expected he'll have an audience with King Charles as well. And as he returns home tomorrow, Carney will stop in Iqaluit, Nunavut to meet the Premier there and to reassert Canada's sovereignty in the Arctic. Our chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton, is in Paris, and she is covering Prime Minister Carney's first international foray.
Mark Carney's first stop on his first international trip was to the Notre Dame Cathedral, which has been completely restored after a devastating fire, in part because the Prime Minister wanted to be able to thank President Macron directly for the work that he did in rebuilding it. But of course, this trip is much more than just that. It is about trying to establish stronger ties with Canada's traditional allies, economic and security allies. And so it was here that the Prime Minister met with President Macron. And although he said he did not expect or want or was going to seek signs of support from our allies, he got them. President Macron said very clearly that to strengthen ties between France and Canada, it was important to reinforce their sovereignty, that it would do that. He also said that he believes that tariffs create inflation and endanger supply chains. He said that he believes strongly in free trade. The Prime Minister as well talked about how these two countries have been allies for so long, and in a time of geopolitical and economic crisis, it's more important than ever for that relationship to continue to develop. From here, the Prime Minister will head to London to meet with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and King Charles. More of his response to Donald Trump's threats, economic and otherwise, and as an attempt to make sure that Canada's allies stand by it in this time of need. Rosemary Barton, CBC News, Paris.
So as mentioned, Prime Minister Carney's next stop is London, and he will talk with both the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and King Charles in an audience with the King. And Anna Cunningham is leading that coverage from outside Buckingham Palace. He tells us the King and Prime Minister Carney, they know each other well.
Well, Heather, Rosemary was mentioning there about the symbolism of this visit, and I think the very fact that Prime Minister Mark Carney is going to be coming here first when he arrives in London to visit the King says something. This, of course, will be King Charles's second Canadian Prime Minister of his reign. And we know that the King is actually not at home here at Buckingham Palace at the moment. The Royal Standard isn't flying yet. We understand he will be making his way likely from his Sandringham estate in Norfolk. But it is said that King Charles is concerned about Canada as head of state, in particular with those comments repeated by US President Donald Trump about making Canada the 51st state. And although we know that the King constitutionally is bound to be above politics, it doesn't stop him from making some potential signs and signals, which people say they've been picking up when he wore, for example, his Canadian medals recently. And also he's planted a maple leaf tree here at Buckingham Palace. And on Wednesday, he received his Canadian representative giving him a new sword here at Buckingham Palace. There's also some reports, Heather, that the King has written personally to the Prime Minister. Now, we know that it's said they have already an established warm friendship from when Mark Carney was Governor of the Bank of England and was here for 7 years. Of course, here at Buckingham Palace, it's a big tourist hotspot, and we bumped into some Canadians, a Canadian couple on vacation here from Toronto. Take a listen to their thoughts on why they think it's important that the Prime Minister does meet the King.
I think it's a plea for support, for help, right? As Canadians, as I said, it feels uncomfortable. It feels, what could happen, we don't know. And so I think the support of the King, as well as the support of the British government, I think is essential.
Yeah, it's a very powerful message. He's our monarch. I think the world listens to messages from the King, so getting that this quickly is great.
Now, that will be a private meeting between the King and the Prime Minister. We will likely get some photos out from the palace afterwards. Then the Prime Minister will head to Downing Street in London, where he will be greeted by the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. We are told, Heather, that those talks are going to focus on strengthening the transatlantic security relationship, growing the AI sector, and also building on that strong commercial relationship between both countries. Heather.
Anna Cunningham, just outside Buckingham Palace. Thank you, Anna.